Day after day, one is getting convinced about the inherent bull market that this is turning out to be. We saw that yesterday when you had a 250-point decline in the Nifty, and that got very swiftly covered into. We recovered about 150 points from the session lows. And look at the kind of backdrop that we kickstarted trade in today. You had the US equity markets as well as Asia all scaling lower by about almost roughly 2 to 3% apiece. In fact, the Nasdaq futures lost about almost 3% in trade overnight, and Asia as well was pretty much reeling with a sea of red all across. That said, while the start for us was weak, it wasn't all that weak either. About 0.7% lower at the session lows. From there, we managed a great recovery. In fact, at one point in time, we were holding up by about 25 points. So almost a 100-point swing from the lows to the session highs. And then marginally closed soft, about 37 odd points in the red for the Nifty Futures, clinging on to that 17,700 print. A good recovery for the broader markets as well from the session lows. You had finally the advances taking over, although by a slim margin. About 91 stocks went home as winners, with about 84 odd to the declines. It was power as well as banks which was the story today, as along with, of course, metals. But let's first talk about the power names, where clearly Tata Power was your star performer today, going home with an 8% surge. You had Indian Energy Exchange with a 7.25% uptick, and the power ancillaries, the likes of Coal India, 6.5% uptick, NTPC, which held out by about 6.25%, and Power Grid, the big mover from yesterday, that as well was resilient today and held out by about 5.5%. Besides that, the Nifty also had due support from metals and names like SBI. The big boy managed to hold out 3.5% at a time when the rest of the private banking majors were actually losers. So if you take a look at a Kotak Bank, an ICICI Bank, financials like HDFC, they were all laggards, anywhere between about 2% of a cut on HDFC being the largest Nifty loser, to about almost 1.5% or so on the other private banking names. Metals as well came back. So you had Hindalco scale up about 3% today. JSW Steel held out by about 3%. You had Nalco scale up by about 6%. And then, of course, the oil sensitives like ONGC and Oil India. Also remember, there is the gas price hike which is going to get implemented come October 1st. So that's also aiding the momentum and the mood on these particular stocks. ONGC was up another 2.25% in today's trading session. The laggards then in IRCTC saw some ease off. That was down about almost 3%. Some of the healthcare names we've been talking about, Metropolis fell another 3.25% today too. Cottage Consumer Products, Naukri and HDFC AMC, which saw a block deal earlier today, that was down about almost 5.25%. From amongst the Nifty as well, it was largely private banks which dragged lower, like I mentioned, and then oil sensitives like paints. So Asian Paints was down about 1.6%. Autos would be under focus, and they were a bit of a lag today, while some of the names like Tata Motors and M&M did recover from the session lows. The recovery wasn't quite broad-based. The likes of Ayesha and Maruti still went home with cuts for themselves and were in the red. Autos is going to be important because day after is when you're going to have the monthly sales data trickle in. It's supposed to be a washout the month gone by, but the commentary going ahead into the festive season is going to be of utmost importance.